Okay, good morning. Let's get started. Are there any questions about what we discussed? Yeah, before we get started, I just want to remind that we'll have the next tutorial tomorrow from 12 to 12:50. Okay, and as done in the first tutorial, the problem sheet will be uploaded in the module as well as in the Google Drive. Okay, and you need to solve the problems and then submit the scan copy of the solutions, right? So we'll give all the information again over email, right? Please follow the instructions and then submit these solutions. Okay, and the syllabus for the tutorial is all the topics that are covered till last Wednesday. That's on 7th of October. Okay. Yeah. Any questions or any clarifications about that? Okay, let's continue the discussion. So far in the course, we looked at how the data gets represented and what is the kind of logic that's required to support the processing of the data. So basically, we looked at the design of the integer unit and design of the floating point unit and put all of them together in the form of the arithmetic and logic unit. And the next part that we'll be looking at is how to represent the program at the high level. All of you are familiar with, right? But what we are interested in these courses is more about the representation of the programs at the machine level, okay, and then how to process this representation of the programs at the machine level and get some understanding of the different kind of operations that are involved in processing these representations of the programs. Okay. Of course, we'll not cover all the details of these topics in this course because it's very vast. Actually, you'll be studying the relevant topics in several courses in the later semesters, right? So we'll only briefly touching upon each of the important concepts and then give an idea about what is it involved in processing this, getting a representation of the programs and then processing the representation of the programs. Okay. And of course, the target is always like what we have done in the case of the hardware design or the ALU design. We always need an efficient way of doing it, right? So basically, we want to process the instructions or the execute instructions as fast as possible. That's basically the throughput of the processor or throughput of the computer system should be as high as possible. And that is the focus of the discussion in the computer architecture course in the next semester. Here we'll get an indication of what is it involved in representing the programs and what is it involved in processing the programs. And then we'll get an understanding of the overall system design that form both the data processing as well as the processing of the representation of the programs. Okay. So basically, as all of you are familiar with, a typical high-level language program will have different types of statements, right? As you are already familiar with, right? Typically, there will be what are called the assignment statements. Right? So, to the left of the assignment operator, there will be a variable, and to the right of the assignment operator, there will be typically an expression, an arithmetic expression or a logical expression, right? And we need to evaluate the expression and then put the result of that evaluation of the expression to the variable the left of the assignment statement. Okay. Then actually most of the arithmetic and logic operations take place in the execution of the assignment statements. Then we need support to perform what are called the control transfer statements. We'll understand what is the meaning of this term called the control transfer. Basically, what we are referring to are the statements like if-then statements or the if-then-else statements. I'm not following the syntax of any particular language here. Okay, this is a generic statements, right? So typically in the if-then-else statements, there will be a condition. We check for the condition. If the condition is true, then we execute the part of the statement related to the then part, right? This is called the body of the statement related to the then part. If the condition is false, right, then we execute the body of the statement related to the else part. Okay, so we'll see how to represent this kind of statements in the machine level and what kind of support is required. Then another major category of statements are what are called the loop statements. You have a variety of loop statements. Most commonly used one is the for statement, right? Where typically there will be an index variable, and we initialize the index variable, then we increment the index variable or decrement the index variable, and we continue these iterations, right, until a particular condition is reached, right? And there is a body of the for loop, and the body of the for loop will be repeatedly executed until we reach the terminating condition. There are also other statements like do while statement and while do statement and so on. Right? All of them are nothing but the loop statements. And one more type of statements that will be typically using in the higher level language programs are the function calls. Right? Because typically you don't write the complete program in a monolithic entity, right? Typically you'll have different modules, and for each module there will be a function, right? So typically any program will be a set of functions or a sequence of functions, right? And for every function there is a set of input arguments, right? And also there may be a set of output arguments, right? So we pass the values for the input arguments, then we call the function, and after the execution of the function, right, the values that are supposed to be returned by the function will be returned by the function, then they'll be taken and then be assigned to the respective variables, right? So majorly these are the four types of statements that we'll be dealing with in a given high level language program. There may be a few other types of statements, right? Maybe we'll just focus on this and get an idea about how each of these types of statements get represented in the machine level. Okay, that's what is the focus of the discussion in this course, right? And typically the machine level operations are specific to the type of the processor that we are dealing with, right? Different processor designers will have a different kind of design philosophies, right? So they will follow a completely different methods of designing the processor. And whenever you want to run a high-level language program on a system based on a particular processor, right, we have to compile the high-level language program to generate the machine code corresponding to the particular processor. We'll be quickly seeing what we mean by the representation of the programs in a particular processor. So typically, everything has to be represented by a sequence of bits, like what we done in the case of the data, right? Whether it's a numeric data, whether it's integer data or floating point real value data, right? We have seen how it's represented as a group of bits, right? And similarly, the character data or the signal data also is only represented as a sequence of bits, right? In the same way, we'll be seeing that even these high-level language programs will be finally represented in the form of binary representation, right? And one thing is we'll map each of the statements in the high-level language program into a sequence of what are called the machine-level instructions. And each instruction we are referring to as a machine-level instruction can be executed by the processor as an entity, right, where there will be an operation to be carried out, and there are operands on which the operation has to be carried out, and the result of the operation has to be stored in another operand called the destination operand, right? And we need to look at how to represent this operation, how to represent these operands, both as well as the source operands and the destination operand, all right? And once we represent each instruction using a sequence of bits, right, then it is a control unit which takes that representation of instruction and then performs the necessary operations within the CPU in order to execute the instruction. So I'm just giving the big picture, then we'll go into the details to some extent in the next few classes. Okay, so let's look at a simple assignment statement, which we already seen in the last class. Let's say if I have a simple statement like z equal to x plus y, right? It would be nice if I can have a machine level instruction, right, which will take the operands of this statement, right? That's arithmetic operation to be carried out, and then put the result into the destination operand, right? So these are the source operands, and this is the destination operand of this simple assignment statement, right? So if I can have a machine level instruction of this form where I have the operation that's specified by this add, this is what is referred to as a mnemonic right? So basically we give you a meaningful name for the operation to be carried out by the instruction. That's what is referred to as a mnemonic. And as we see later, each of these mnemonics will have a binary representation that's referred to as the opcode, basically the code of the operation. And then we have these two operands, right? One is the source operand 1 and the other one is the source operand 2. Then this is the destination operand, right? But though it is very easy to translate a high level language statement into a machine level instruction here, but the representation of this instruction becomes long in terms of the number of bits that are required. This is what we were discussing in the class yesterday, right? Basically, each of these source operands and the destination operand are referring to what are called the variables, and each of these variables will have a memory address where the information about the variables will be stored. Basically, if I have some values for x and y already identified, then the values of this x and y should be available at the memory locations that are assigned to these variables x and y. And after the operation is carried out, the result that's produced by the ALU has to be stored at the memory location corresponding to the j. And typically, the memory address is very long. It will be of the order of tens of bits, right? So in a typical system, right, we'll be seeing that the memory address will be maybe about a 30-bit address, right? Because we are typically dealing with memory spaces of a few gigabytes, right? And in order to specify one of the memory locations in such a huge memory space, right, it requires of the order of 30 bits, right? So if I have to put 30 bits for each of the operands, right, then the information about the operand itself takes 90 bits, and then opcode requires a few bits. Let's say it takes six bits, right? Then the whole of this instruction representation requires maybe 96 bits. And typically, we have this memory organized in terms of like what we've seen in the last class, right? There is a width of the memory unit, which is specified by that n value, right? So in this case, typically the n value will be 32 bits. So if I'm talking about 32-bit wide memory, then this instruction storage requires 3 memory locations. Then just to get the instruction from the memory into the processor, I have to perform 3 memory read operations. And then once I read the complete instruction, then I have to perform the necessary operations in order to execute the instructions. What are the necessary operations in order to execute this instruction? First, I have to get the value of the variable x. For that, I have to perform a memory read operation, where I will give the address of the x as input to memory unit. Then I say that I want to perform a read operation, and then we read the content of that memory location, and then bring that value of the x into the processor. Followed by that, we have to perform the memory read operation from the memory location of y. And once we get both the operands, we have to pass them to the arithmetic and logic unit. And then we have to indicate that the arithmetic logic unit has to perform the add operation. And after it performs the add operation using the circuit for the addition, right, then the result will be produced. That result has to be stored in the memory location for Z, for which again I have to perform a memory operation. In this case, it's a memory write operation. So I'll give the address of Z as the memory address, and then I indicate that it's a write operation, and the result produced by the ALU will be passed on to the memory unit through the data lines, data in lines, so that the memory unit can perform the write operation into that particular memory location, right? So we see that though it's a single instruction that represents this higher level language statement, right? In order to execute this instruction, I have to perform several operations. So 2 memory read operations, then the add operation, then a memory write operation. So all these operations have to be carried out within the processor, and there should be some entity in the processor which takes care of performing these operations in the proper sequence. And that's what is done by the control unit. So control unit will get the representation of the instruction as the input, right? Then it initiates the sequence of the necessary operations in order to perform the execution of the instruction. Again, I'm only giving the high-level picture of the functionality of the control unit, right? The details will be discussed in the next course. So now, let's look at a little bit more involved statement. Yeah, please stop me if you have any questions at any point of time. Yeah, suppose I have a higher level language assignment statement like this, right? A equal to A plus B plus C minus D. It's obvious that I cannot represent this whole statement in a single machine level instruction, because a typical machine level instruction will perform only one operation at a time, right? And it can perform the operation only on 2 source operands, and then it will put the result in the destination operand, right? But here the arithmetic statement that I have involves performing 2 addition operations and then a subtraction operation, right? So basically, this whole statement that I have here will be represented as a sequence of instructions, right? So let's get started. So what is the operation that we need to do here? We have to first add A and B, right? To the result of this addition of A and B, we have to add the value of the sum. Value of the variable C. And once I get the sum of the A, B, and C, then I have to subtract the value of D from the sum of the A, B, and C. All right. And once I complete all these operations, whatever the result that I get has to be stored at the memory location for the variable E, right? So that's what we want to do by executing this higher level language statement, right? As all of you know, this is what is called as the infix notation of expression. In this case, we are talking about the arithmetic expression. What do you mean by the infix notation? The operator is in between the 2 operands. So basically, I have the plus operator here. and it's applied on the two operands that are to the left and right of that operator, right? And after I get that, then we have another add operation associated with this operator, right? What are the two operands for this? It is the result of this, right? And then this, right? And once I complete this operation, then I have the next arithmetic operation where one operand is the result of this expression and the other operand is the t, right? And I think at least the computer science students know that one can convert the infix notation into what is called the postfix notation, right? So here, what does that postfix expression indicate? We have the two operands followed by the operator, right? So the first two operands here will be added, and that's what is indicated by the operator here. And then the result of this will be forming as operand for the next operation, right? So this is the source operand 1 for the next operation here, right? And we have the second operand here, right? And once I get the result of these, right, then this forms one operand for the next operation, right? And the second operand is this, right? So typically it will be more convenient to convert this infix notation of the arithmetic expression to the postfix form, and then the postfix form can be represented as a sequence of instructions, right? And all of this will be actually done by the compiler, right? And right now we are only trying to understand how these operations are going to be carried out. Okay, so how do I represent each of these into a machine level instructions, right? So first we take these operands A and B. So these are the two source operands. Then I get the operator, right? So in this case, the operation is the add operation, right? So once I have the postfix notation, I look for the operands, and once I get the two operands, then typically there will be an operator. So the two operands will be source operands, then the operator will be represented by the corresponding mnemonic. Now, where do I put this intermediate result? That is the sum of the A and B. I cannot put it to any of the variables of the in the program which are declared by the user, all right? Because each of the variables that are declared in the program are meant for some specific purpose, right? So I cannot use any of the variables that are defined or declared in the program. So what is done in the machine level representation of this statement is that we will have some intermediate storage entities where we can store the results of the operations that occur in the execution of the statements. So that's where we actually come to the usage of the registers, right? So now we'll use one of the registers. Let's say we use register R0, right? So again, the compiler is the one which will know what are all the registers that are available in the processor, all right? And then it will start using those registers to store the intermediate results of the operations that are carried out in the execution of a higher level language statement. Okay, so in this case, we store the sum of the values of A and B in the register R0. So now R0 becomes the destination operand. And how do I specify this register operand here? How many bits are required to specify the register operand? That depends on how many registers are there in the register file. If there are 32 registers, right, then the register operand is specified by 5-bit address, 5-bit register address. As now you can see that earlier we are talking about representing a variable's address in the form of a memory address using a 30-bit address, whereas if I have to specify an operand only by its register address, then it requires only 5 bits. Now actually the instruction becomes smaller. Okay, we'll come back to the relevant issues later. Okay, so what is we have done now? We have come up with an add instruction that performs add operation A and B and then puts the sum of the values of the A and B into the register R0. What is the next step to be carried out? One more addition operation, right? So what is the source operand 1 here? That is the sum of the A and B that's available in the register R0, right? To which we need to add the second operand, source operand, that is the C, right? And again, we need to put the intermediate result in a temporary storage in the form of a register. I can use the same register like R0 itself, or I can use a different register, right? Let's say we go ahead and use the same register R0. Is there anything wrong here? We are taking the current value of R0, which contains the value of the sum of the A and B, to which we are adding this value of C. And after these are processed by the ALU to perform the addition operation, the result is going to be produced by the ALU. And then I will write the result that's coming out of the ALU into the register R0. Okay. So one can have the same operand as both the source operand as well as the destination operand. Okay. Now we can see that in the first instruction here, I require 5-bit register addresses and 2 30-bit memory addresses, right? So that becomes 60 plus 5, 65 plus maybe opcode is 71 bits, right? So I need 71 bits to represent this first add instruction. Whereas when it comes to the second add instruction here, we require 2 5-bit register operands, right? And then 1 30-bit memory address, right? So it's 30 bits plus 10, 40 bits, then 6 for 46 bits, right? So you can see that here I require maybe 71 bits, here I require 46 bits. So now you see that the different add instructions, depending on the type of the operands on which the addition operation is carried out. What do you mean with type of operands here? We're talking about whether they are memory operands or whether they are register operands, right? The length of the instruction will be different. Actually, this leads to what is called varying length representation of the instructions, right? And it's kind of intuitive that I need to know what is the length of the instruction before I can process that instruction, all right? And for that, the control unit has to be capable of doing that. So it has to first figure out what is the length of the instruction, then it has to fetch that instruction, and then it has to perform the necessary operations, right? And this leads to the control unit becoming very complex, right? And actually, when we support the instructions of different lengths in a processor, right, then that processor architecture is referred to as complex instruction set computing architecture, shortly called as the CISC architecture. Most of the processors that were designed in the 80s and maybe even 90s, right, were based on this complex instruction set computing architecture. And typically they supported the instructions like arithmetic instructions having all 3 memory operands or 2 memory operands and 1 register operands, or maybe 1 memory operand and 2 register operands, or all the operands can be register operands, right? So that will lead to the different lengths of the instructions. So performing the interpretation of the representation of instructions, which is referred to as the instruction decoding, that is the main function of the control unit, right? So the instruction decoding becomes very complex, right? So it requires fairly complex logic to perform this instruction decoding, and this logic is put into the entity called the control unit, right? And typically, whenever you have these complex formats of the instructions, right, then that's referred to as the complex instruction set computing architecture. Okay, so I think some of you might have heard of the process like Pentium, right? So the Pentium processor is one of the examples of the complex instruction set computing architecture. Okay, and we'll come back to the discussion on the simpler version of this architecture is called the reduced instruction set computing architecture, where typically all the instructions will be of the same length. We'll come back to it little later. Okay. Now let's complete the discussion on this translation of the high-level language statement here. So we perform the two add operations. Then the sum of the A and B and C will be available in the register R0. So now we have to perform the subtraction operation on the sum of A, B, and C that's available in the register R0. All right. Then the second operand, that is D, is the one that we have to subtract from the sum of the A, B, and C. And then we have to put the result in the destination operand of the assignment statement here, right, which is the variable E, right? So again, we see that I have now an instruction where the operation to be carried out is the subtraction. The destination operand is a memory operand, and the two source operands are there. One source operand is a register operand. The other operand, other source operand is a memory operand. So we have seen that in order to represent this simple arithmetic statement, we have three instructions, and three instructions have a different kind of format, right? And this will lead to a complex way of representing the instructions. Okay. Now, any questions about this? But as you noted here, the number of instructions that we need is typically related to the number of operations that we have to carry out in the arithmetic statement. Okay. Now let me just give you another simple statement. So, okay. Yeah. So if I give you statement like S equal to P multiplied by Q minus R multiplied by T, how do we translate this statement into the sequence of machine instructions? Yeah. What are the operations that we need to perform here? So earlier we looked at as an arithmetic statement where all the operators have what is called the same. Yeah, I'm trying to get the word from you. Yeah. So we have here only the addition and subtraction operations, right? And that's why we could convert this expression from the infix form to the postfix form as given here. Okay. What is the postfix form for this second statement here? Is it that PQ star? And what is the next one? Yeah. Yeah. So Vikram says it's the precedence. So there is what is called the precedence of the operators. And as all of you should be knowing, right, the multiplication operator has higher precedence than the subtraction operator. That's basically multiplication has a higher precedence than the addition and subtraction. Even the division operation has the higher precedence than the addition and subtraction. And within addition and subtraction, they have the same precedence, and multiplication and division have the same precedence, right? So basically, we need to take into consideration the precedence of the operators. So the proper way of converting this statement into the higher level language, into the sequence of machine level instructions, basically involves getting the postfix notation for this as this, right? So first we have to multiply P and Q, then we have to multiply R and T, and then we have to subtract the product of R and T from the product of P and Q. So this is where the conversion of a given arithmetic statement into the postfix form is very, very important. Again, typically this is done by the compiler. So what is the sequence of instructions for this now? First, we have to perform multiplication operation. I'm not worried about right now. I'm not looking at whether they are integer operands, whether they are unsigned integers or signed integers or real valued operands, right? So accordingly, the mnemonic will be different. Okay, I just want you to keep that in mind. But so here we'll use some generic mnemonic to represent the multiplication operation. So we perform the multiplication operation on P and Q. Then again, we store the result in one of the registers, right? Then when I want to perform the multiplication operation on R and T, I cannot use R0 because I am going to use the R0 later, right? Because R0 is the product of P and Q. So I have to use another register, let's say R1, all right, to store the product of the R and T, right? Then once I get the product of R and T, I can perform the subtraction operation, okay, on, sorry. So we have to subtract the product of R and T that's available in the register R1 from the product of P and Q that's available in the register R0. And this has to be put in the destination operand, which is the variable S here, right? So basically, the translation of the higher level language arithmetic statement into a sequence of machine instructions. These are what are called the machine instructions. Right? And at a later point, you'll be seeing how to represent each of these machine instructions in the form of a bit sequence. Okay. So it is the compiler's responsibility to convert this high-level language statement, arithmetic statement, into the corresponding sequence of machine instructions. Okay. Yeah. Any questions about that? Actually, you can see that now any type of arithmetic statement or logic statement, arithmetic expression or logic expression in the assignment statement can be converted into the postfix notation, and then from the postfix notation, one can get the sequence of machine instructions corresponding to that postfix expression of the assignment statement or the arithmetic expression in the assignment statement. Okay, so you can take a few examples and then practice that. Okay, now let's look at a typical control transfer statement. I'll take a simple don't worry about the syntax of the statement. Right? What are we trying to do here? Assuming that A and B are unsigned values. Right? What is this if then else statement trying to do? If A is greater than B, C is equal to A minus B, else C is equal to B minus A. Right? As all of you can figure out, right? We are getting nothing but the absolute difference between A and B, and then put that value into the variable C. Right? So the high-level language statement may have a function, right, called as something like absolute. Right? And then absolute function may have a statement like this. So let's not worry about the using a function for this. Okay. Yeah. How do I represent this statement into a sequence of machine instructions? What are we required to do here now? We have a condition here. Sorry. So we have to check for that condition. If the condition is true, right, then this is what is called the then part. So we have to execute the body of the then part. So here so happens that the body of the then part has got only one statement, right? And after we execute the body of then part, then we have to come out of this if statement, because we are not supposed to execute the else part. Only when the condition is not true, right, then we have to execute the else part, right? And after we complete all these operations, we should go ahead with the next statement in the program, right? How do we transfer this statement into a sequence of instructions? What are the operations that we need to carry out? First, we have to perform a comparison of the variables A and B, right? So let's assume that there is a instruction with the mnemonic called the CMP, which stands for the compare. So it will take two operands, A and B, right? What is it you want to know from this comparison operation? We want to determine the relation between A and B, right? What are the possible relations? The possible relations are A is greater than B, A is less than B, or A is equal to B, right? So when the ALU performs this operation, it will generate a few flags like in the case of the hack ALU, we've seen that there are 0 flag and negative flag, right? A typical processor will have several flags, right? Some of the flags that are required in performing the comparison operation are setting these flags like greater than, equal to, and less than. So if A is greater than B, then this GT flag will be set to 1. If A is equal to B, equal to flag will be set to 1. If A is less than B, LT flag will be set to 1. Okay. So accordingly, we check for these conditions of the flags after the execution of the instruction, then perform the next operation. What is the next operation to be carried out? If this greater than flag is set to 1, then I need to subtract B from A and then put the result in the C. Okay. So there are different ways of writing the program, right? If okay, maybe let me write it in. Yeah. What does this mnemonic specify? Jump if less than or equal to. So when will that be true? When the greater than flag is 0, right? And equal to flag is 1, or the less than flag is 1. So basically this jump less than equal to will check for either equal to is equal to 1 or less than equal to 1. And what has to be done when this condition is true? We have to go and execute the else part. So we'll put a label here, right, referring to the body of the else part, which will be at a later point in this sequence. We'll come back to that later. Okay, it will be somewhere here. And when this condition is not true, what does that mean? It is greater than, right? If less than or equal to is not true, then it is greater than. What is done when it's greater than, right? We have to perform this operation of C equal to A minus B, right? So basically, I have to do the subtraction of A comma B and then put the result in the C, right? What is it we are supposed to do after this subtraction operation? We are not supposed to execute anything related to this else part. So we have to basically come out of the loop or come out of the if then statement, right? So basically we perform what is called a jump to end of if. What is the end of if here? It is the next statement after the if statement, right? Yeah. Now we have a label associated with this instruction here, which is called the else part, where we perform subtraction of A from B, which is there in the else part, and put the result in the C, right? And then we'll have this end if statement here. Whatever it is, there will be some sequence of instructions correspond to the next statement after the if then else, right? So now let's try to understand what is the sequence of instructions trying to do. We compare A and B. If jump, if less than or equal to, then we jump to the else part. That is, we come here. That is where we perform the subtraction of A from B and then assigning the result to C. As you can see here, that corresponds to the else part. If this condition is not true, then we go ahead with the then part that involves subtraction of B from A and then putting the result in C, right? And once we do the subtraction, then we are completely done with the then part. We have come out of the if then else statement, and that's what is indicated by this label here. Basically here we are talking about a label associated with the instruction, right? And why is it we call it as a control transfer statement? Because we are transferring the execution of the program control or the control of the program execution from one instruction to another instruction, which is not necessarily in the next position in the sequence, right? So these are what are called the control transfer statements, which are typically the if then else statements, or in the case of the C language, we have what are called the switch statements, right? So typically all of these will be control transfer statements. Just 1 minute, please. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Are there any questions about this? So basically, you've seen that the translation of a arithmetic statement has to be done in a particular way, and translation of a control transfer statement like the if then else has to be done in a different way, right? Again, it is the responsibility of the compiler to generate the sequence of machine instructions for each of the statements in the high-level language. So maybe we'll stop at this point. In the next class, we'll look at the loop statements, right, and then understand what is it involved in representing a loop statement, and then we'll look at briefly how to represent the functions and the function calls. Okay, yeah. Any questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, we'll stop here. So we'll meet at 12 o'clock tomorrow, right? You can, I'll be available in the Google Meet. So if there are any clarifications, you can ask me, right, over the Google Meet. Okay, see you then tomorrow.